Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe 2015. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits. What, you were expecting Ethel Merman? The Edinburgh Festival Fringe is, as I've said before, a wonderful thing. And one of the many wonderful things about it is its social atmosphere. It's very easy to make friends with people up at the Edinburgh Fringe. Sometimes those friendships may only last for the duration of your stay, but sometimes they become lifelong friendships. I myself have made a whole group of friends from going up to the Edinburgh Festival Fringe over the last 8 or so years. And indeed, in a forthcoming episode of Musical Talk, you'll hear from Josh Clark, who is someone I have come to know as a friend. And Musical Talk's own David Herzog and David Kingsmill both came into my life as friends and as presenters of Musical Talk after initial meetings at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. So it's got a lot to answer for. But friendship, of course, is one of the most fundamental relationships in a human's life. Sometimes they can be more complex and sometimes more meaningful than a more traditional romantic relationship. I certainly find so. And so today we're going to be talking about 3 shows which all look at the issue of friendship in a very different way. Sometimes obliquely, sometimes head-on, sometimes a subplot, sometimes the main element of the driver of the story. And the shows up for discussion today are Jesus Camp, the comedy musical, Noel Coward and Friends live in Las Vegas, and The Secretary turned CEO. 3 really remarkably different shows, but each has a thematic link of friendship. In one case, it's about 2 unlikely people becoming friends. In another, it's about a man conjuring up the ghosts of his dead friends to help him avoid loneliness. And in the third case, it's very much about a love-hate relationship between a man and a woman. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Friendship is the overarching theme of today, so let's get down to the details. First up, you're going to hear a conversation with Dan Peter Reeves, Bethan Francis and Winston Eade as we discuss their rather splendid 2-hander musical, Jesus Camp, the comedy musical. And to lead us into that, let's hear a song from that very strong show.
I'm gonna go to heaven, up to the sky and be free. Yes, I'm gonna go to heaven, just Mary and Joseph and Jesus and me.
CNJ Christian Radio. Today we'll be talking about a new brand of Christianity, an evangelical summer camp recruiting kids to an extremist and, quite frankly, scary set of beliefs. Would you expect your child to lay down their life in the name of Christ our Savior? We'll be talking about that and more after this short break.
School's out for summer, and there's no time to lose. So many ways to fill your days, but how do you choose? Some kids do swim camp, some kids smoke crack. But if you really want to change the world, pick Jesus Camp. You only get one chance to make a difference. You only have one choice if you want to save your soul. Tell your mom you're ready and your bags are packed, 'cause anyone can come by to Jesus Camp, to Jesus Camp, to Jesus Camp.
0900 hours. Arrived at Sarah Chastity's Christian Camp for Kids, North Dakota.
Dear God, please make this the best summer ever, and help me to show others the true power of your love. Better pack my Bible and a crucifix or 2. Jesus needs me to spread his love, so that's what I'm gonna do. These kids will need a direction, Jesus told me in my dreams. Gonna show those kids exactly what being a child of God really means. 'Cause Jesus has touched me, yes, he touched me deep and true. I'll let every kid who goes to Jesus Camp know that he will touch them too. Yes, he will.
Driving down the highway, flashing our headlamps. All the cool kids are on their way to Jesus Camp. To Jesus Camp.
To Jesus.
To Jesus Camp.
Musical talk.
I'm Dan Peter Reeves. I wrote the book for Jesus Camp, the musical comedy, and I played Chad Foster.
I'm Bethan Francis. I wrote the lyrics and I play Lucy Skipper.
I'm Winston Eade, and I wrote the music, and I also play the piano for the show, for Jesus Camp, the musical.
So we have the three creatives here, so if you don't know what's going on, then no one will. Jesus Camp the musical, let's start at the very beginning. Interesting title. Well, it would be nice to hear from you how you would describe the show plot-wise without revealing any of the revelations or twists and turns and conclusions. But then we'll get into how it came to be, because I think people will be surprised at your accents originally, as I was when I saw the show.
Plot-wise, it follows an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old American kids on a summer camp trip to a Christian summer camp, and it's basically what happens to them while they're there and how they're indoctrinated, and it's about the crazy way some religious groups work.
So that's the show. Now, I think people with particular resonant ear hearing will notice that you're not actually American.
This is correct.
And this is a very American piece in the sense of you are playing Americans, and the idea of a summer camp for children, religious or otherwise, is such an American idea and doesn't really take place here. There's we do have the Scouts and the Woodcraft folk, but nobody goes to them tremendously, and it's not quite the same thing at all. So how did it come about? How did you get the idea? And how did you feel that you would be able to do it justice? Because that's quite interesting to me.
So it's almost by accident that we've sort of written a show that's more suited to an American audience, perhaps. But the English seem to get it too. But it's based on a documentary that you can see on Netflix called Jesus Camp. And it was about a year ago that I watched it, and I said, this is crazy. It's not a comedy documentary at all. I said, this is mad, but it would make a good musical comedy. And I said it to Bethan.
I like your thinking. You'll go far.
I said it to Bethan, and she actually happened to have just watched it herself.
Literally the same day.
Oh, right.
It was bizarre.
And she said, oh, watch that too. It kind of spiralled from there. The American accents is fluke, maybe.
Yeah. I trained in America, but I think, we've had a few Americans say they thought we sounded American, so we're happy with that.
I'm not American, but I genuinely thought you were an American cast. And then when afterwards you came up and said, hello, I thought, something's gone wrong here. It does not compute. You're inspired basically by a documentary, and
Yeah.
I suspect a fairly sinister sounding one too.
It's
the way
very
you're describing
dark.
it. Yes.
Yeah, very dark.
I mean, and there is this in the musical, isn't there? There is this use of it's an evangelical Christian summer camp for kids.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it does appear to be being used for an ulterior motive, shall we say, which actually, in fairness, you put this lovely level in whereby you have a Christian radio play periodically, and they are opposed to it because they consider it to be damaging reputation. So you've covered your bases very nicely. But there is a great step from I've seen a documentary, let's make a musical, to how do we make a musical?
Yeah.
So what experience did you have? How did you turn your idea into actions?
It's not something we've done before. We've never written a musical before, but it's always something we've wanted to do.
Yeah.
Once again, I like your thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything you say is thematically correct.
That's when Winston came on board, because we knew we didn't have the musical know-how to be able to write a full musical.
No.
Bethan has musical knowledge, but not enough to follow it through.
No.
So you're the man with the hand in the piano.
Absolutely, yeah. The aim really, musically, was to create a catchy, tuneful score, but then keeping the innocence of it's very much character driven. A lot of the score is, and the way the music, it sort of takes you on a journey. And then with the musical score, you've got the songs, which by teaming up with Bethan as well, writing the lyrics, we've managed to really capture the whole emotion of the whole journey of these characters, I think.
Well, I think, funnily enough, that it's interesting to me the way you describe the plot, because the way you describe the plot is absolutely accurate, of course, but there is the other plot, which is it is about two very lonely children in their own way, forming a, sadly, turns out, ephemeral friendship over the course of one summer, as we clearly becomes apparent that they aren't friends 25 years later. But that's actually lovely, and that ability to capture that brittle... Pride isn't the right word, but there's a brittleness to wanting to be accepted and wanting to have a friend, and yet at the same time preserving your I don't know what the word would be, but not being hurt.
Yeah, they're protecting themselves.
And that comes across really strongly in there, and that's a beautiful character journey, as you quite rightly say. So you do have the parallel of the context, or you have the character journey within the context of the book that you've written. So, but I hear the three elements. How did the three elements get together? How did you know each other? Then did you write the book and then the songs were added, or was it an integrated affair? Did you all stand around the piano with pots of alcohol, which I believe is traditional?
There was standing around the piano quite a bit.
Yeah.
There was a lot of...
Someone saying, "Where's the key?"
Yeah. There was a lot of brainstorming, and really the whole creative process was...
It was
all
kind of a
together.
mix match, because we were just finding our way. So sometimes I'd write a bit of script and then I'd be like, I really could do with a song that goes here and it needs to be a little bit like this.
And take us to this point.
Other times...
So you knew the journey of the song?
Pardon?
You knew the journey of the song individually within the narrative?
Often I'd write something I'd know, I want a song to do this and take us here. But sometimes Winston would have brainstormed some ideas. He'd go, I've got this great melody that I think might suit this sort of thing. So it was really a back and forth. It was a really sporadic way of writing. Probably not very time effective.
It was great fun though.
Great fun. If the sausage comes out of the machine at the end, that's fine. It doesn't matter quite how the machine works.
It did its job,
we had to be quite brutal. Like sometimes we'd find something we really liked, but it just wasn't doing what we wanted, and we just had to say that's not going to happen, right? And that's just how it is.
Mark Twain says you have to kill your babies.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, given the anti-abortion
relevant
demonstration in the piece, it may be connected. So tell me, how did you know each other?
So me and Dan have known each other for years and years now, actually.
Like 6 years.
Yeah, we actually started. We met each other in a theatre company called Peer Productions, and then we worked together for a year. We both went off and trained, and then we came back, and we just sort of came back together, and we wanted to.
We decided, do we want to be the people going to auditions every day, crying at the end of the night, or do we just want to do something ourselves? And no one can say you're not having this role, because we say we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Self-production is so often the way in. And you, Winston?
I met Bethan actually at a wedding. It was about 2 years ago, and we've stayed in contact ever
we just
since.
sort of bump into each other.
And then it was when Bethan and Dan said, "Look, we really want to write a musical," and I got on board.
I'd seen him play at the wedding, and I knew he was good, and we'd bump into each other every now and then, and we just sort of discuss things.
We could do this, or we could do that.
And so once we decided last year in Edinburgh that we wanted to definitely do a musical, I was just like, I know somebody, I know a guy, and this was our guy.
Well, it is all about networking, isn't it? It's one of those professions. Now, you mentioned that you used the word rather splendidly, fluke, for the quality of the accent. But I think Bethan said you'd been to America.
Yeah, I trained in America. So I trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. So obviously, most of the time I had to sound American, because they ask you to speak in an American accent a lot, and I was doing American plays a lot. So,
And was that something? Did you get more than that though? I mean, forgive me. It's interesting that I'm not American. I've not been to America. A great deal of respect for the place, but I know it only from its cultural exports to Britain. But to me, the way you put the thing across, it felt plausible. Your characters felt real within that plausible context. How much did you bring an American sensibility to that, and how much did you know that, and how much of that is actually just luck of the draw or intense research? You tell me.
I think, the documentary obviously was a massive thing to work with. That just sort of really helped us.
It's your foundation stone.
Yeah, it's a very strong base to start.
I know that I've seen this happening in America. I knew kids who'd been to Jesus Camp.
A real one.
Yeah, and we still meet people coming, our audience members, saying, "Oh, I've been to Jesus Camp," and this reminded me. But yeah, it's interesting.
And also, it was quite nice because we didn't have to be firmly accurate with America because it is for a British audience,
Yeah.
and
It is, yes.
the British do have a certain view of Americans, one
Yeah.
that we possibly play up at
Take
times.
advantage of, probably.
Well, it's truism rather than caricature, perhaps, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's understood reality rather than reality. And
Yeah.
I think all musical theatre trades on that, whether
Yeah.
it be a international culture or whatever the conceit of the piece is.
Yeah.
Right, mate, let's talk about this. And I'm going to put speech marks around the word
Sorry.
taste. Because actually, I think you square the circle very nicely. I think that it's actually not offensive unless you happen to be so far into the world of fundamental Christianity
Yeah.
that you're going to be offended by anything anyway, and wouldn't be coming to a piece like this unless you've really misunderstood the advertising.
Yes.
So, how far did you feel you could go? How far did you want to go? Because what was your primary aim was it about the Christianity, or was it about the relationship between the two children?
Both,
Both,
for sure.
definitely.
But when we first previewed the show, it wasn't quite as dark as it is
No,
now.
we
We
thought
wanted
we
to
were-
push that.
yeah,
But it was always important that it came from a place of innocence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we always wanted it to be a charming piece, even though even if it's got these darker elements to it, we wanted it to be coming from a nice place. Like
Yeah.
we're genuinely not out to attack anyone.
No.
It's a very specific branch of Christianity we're going after.
And you balance that in the text, as I said, in a way.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually. I thought that was quite a masterstroke because it wasn't a blunt instrument you were using. You were using a much sharper tool.
Yeah.
But I wondered how much that was genuinely the focus. But I love the fact that the lightness and the brightness and the, as you say, the innocence
Yeah.
helps put the darkness into contrast.
Yeah, it allows us to go a lot further with it because, children do say things, these crazy things, and so it's easy for us to access that with that.
That's why the songs are all so happy. Like
Yeah.
they can be singing about being pro-life and all this, and it's so happy because really they don't
They
know
don't
what they're saying
talking about.
particularly.
Yeah.
It is received wisdom, in fact, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which in itself is something that needs to be shown up rather more, I think, anyway. In theatre. So, for the development, when were you creating this? You said a year ago, I think, you sort of come out with the idea. And when was this documentary on?
Documentary was out in 2007, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a new thing that the
Yeah.
documentary's been
But
there.
when did the kernel of the idea occur to you? And then how long was the process for sort of creating the musical between the three of you?
It was very quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
surprisingly.
The actual show.
The gestation period, yeah.
Yeah, well, when Dan and Bethan came to me with the idea, this is what we want to do, the actual creation process, probably around 8 to 9 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh,
So
really?
we-
As swift as
It was
that?
very quick.
Blimey.
We did a lot of group sessions, didn't we?
The idea came up. We first thought of the idea before last year's Edinburgh. We thought about it a bit through the Edinburgh. When we got back in September, we got in contact with Winston and started writing, and then we performed it first at the Lewisham Fringe in November.
Oh, right, so it's been out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's changed a bit since then,
Yeah,
and like
it's changed a lot.
Bethan went travelling this year, which is super helpful.
Sorry.
So we
In
had
a
like
modern world,
6
it makes
months
a
off.
difference. You can work on the beach.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it gave us time to mix the CD as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a soundtrack recording, isn't
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is rather splendid. We'll get onto that, I think, in a minute. So we were talking about how you've tried to pitch it for taste, and how has it been received, particularly as you've had it in Lewisham and now you've had it in Edinburgh for a few days. We're quite at the beginning of the Fringe here, so it's only had a few chances to be aired, as it
Yeah.
were. How have people been responding? And what's good, I saw when I went in, that there was no seating. All the seats are gone. Everyone was,
Yeah.
it's full.
Which I like.
Which is a fantastic experience.
Yeah, it's very nice for us.
Yeah, it's really nice.
So people want in.
Yeah.
So both
Brilliant.
stay in.
Yeah, well, so far they have,
Yeah.
apart from
Yeah.
the odd person.
Yeah.
Well,
Some people leave because they can't see very well
Yeah.
if they're
Yeah.
stood. But we seem to be doing quite well on that front. We haven't had anyone give us anything. I think if people stay and people see it through, I think
Yeah.
it's quite clear what we're saying.
Yeah.
And if we offend some people, we offend some people.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
there's always someone to be offended by everything,
Yeah,
isn't there,
you
really?
can't.
There's no right not to be offended in the world. So
Yeah, exactly.
Despite Twitter, sorry everyone. Now that's interesting because, as I say, I agree with you. I mean, anyone who leaves halfway through will be missing the point anyway. I think rather,
Yeah.
Yes.
because it does reach a cohesive ending, and also there's that lovely little sort of, I don't know what, a flash forward, I suppose would be the phrase, wouldn't it, to where they are some years later,
Yes.
which I won't ruin, but it's a very nice little coda on the piece. And suffice to say that it has a melancholy strain to it, I think
Yeah.
would be the nicest way of putting it. So how if I were to ask you, what would be the word to describe the tone of the piece? If one word would do it. You may cry foul, of course, at the simplicity of that question.
Oh.
One word. I'm looking
Everyone's
at you.
looking at me. I would say, it's not really to do with the tone, but I would say that as a show, it's a bit like if Book of Mormon got together with Spelling Bee and had a baby, it would be this show, I think.
Well, good luck making that
Yeah.
happen. Oh, turn the lights out, won't you? Splendid, but that's very interesting. So you see yourself very much in that Broadway tradition, actually,
Yeah.
then, or slightly off-Broadway tradition, perhaps, in the case of Spelling Bee. That's very interesting to me. So I suppose, having done this, then, the next question is the obvious one. Are there other musicals? What do you call yourself as a group?
Well,
We're British Exist Theatre, but we do plays usually, really dark
plays. This is the first
really
one.
Serious plays.
Yeah, this is the first one my mum came out smiling.
Yeah, all our family were really pleased that we were doing something upbeat.
Yeah, and with cleaner language.
We'd love to go on and do
More musicals.
more musicals. We're just waiting for the idea to come and whack us around the
And
head.
also the chance to actually develop either this show or other shows that we have, and to really just move it forward, because we have a lot of ideas.
And you
it's
are thinking
really-
of working together then? That's the plan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Splendid. So what was the name of that company again?
British Exist Theatre.
British Exist.
Yes,
Theatre.
yeah.
And you're spelling theatre TRE at the end.
Yes.
Yes,
Because
yes,
you're
yes.
not
We
American.
are actually British, yes.
Oh, no, you have to get it right.
Yeah.
We have listeners everywhere. Well, I do hope that you find... basically, I hope you get a subscription to a documentaries channel, actually. That would appear to be... And I'm thinking slightly more than Channel 5. I don't think you need a man who looked like Hitler and who had two bottoms or whatever. And documentary is being made by them. But... I'm really glad that there's a possibility, well, not more than a possibility, I think that there's an intent to go to the future with this group, and to, presumably, by the way you're talking, look into different areas. It's not just musicals, is it?
No.
Musicals and plays,
Yeah.
And different tones as well. I like all that. Well, thank you very, very much indeed
you.
for
Thank you.
talking to Musical Talk.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I hope, perhaps, to see you next year with the next one. I know Book of Revelation, the musical, as you're working through the biblical canon.
We'll just defend everyone.
You'll need one more person for your four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Apart from that, well, thank you very much indeed, and I wish you great success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we first met, I thought you were basically satanic.
And I thought that you were a Jesus freak.
Well, I kind of was.
Maybe your incessant singing did me good.
Oh, Chad Foster, I always knew that it would. Trust in God, and you'll find what you seek. And we're gonna go to heaven, up to the sky and be free. Yes, we're gonna go to heaven. Just Mary and Joseph and Jesus, and you and me.
Well, there we are, another song to finish off that interview with Winston Eade, Bethan Francis and Dan Peter Reeves. Jesus Camp, the comedy musical, turned out to be a lovely little gem. I gave it 4 stars, called it deft and funny and surprisingly moving. More from them, please. And now for another show, also set in America, but with a very, very different sentiment, because it is Noel Coward and Friends live in Las Vegas. Now, anyone who knows anything about Noel Coward will recall that in the late 1950s he did a series of cabaret performances to great success in Las Vegas, in Nevada. And indeed, there is an album of one of his performances at that period, and a good album it is too. But this play is set in the dressing room one evening on the build-up to one of those performances, and Noel Coward is feeling lonely, and so he conjures up the ghosts of his dear friends, Gertrude Lawrence and Ivor Novello. I caught up with 2 people involved with the show in a very intimate way, David Robinson and Colin Hearn, to talk about Noel Coward and Friends live in Las Vegas. Musical Talk.
My name is David Robertson. Yes, I'm involved in Noel Coward and Friends live in Las Vegas. I play the role of Noel Coward, and I was involved in writing the script.
My name is Colin Hearn, and I played the role of Mr. Hing, the stage manager, and Ivan Novello.
Now, I very much enjoyed this show. I think it's a 5-star show. It is a fantastic, brittle, funny, classy show.
Thank you.
It sparkles, it's wonderful. And I love the conceit. And the conceit, as far as I can see, and you must correct me if I've misunderstood this because I am an idiot, but the way I enjoyed it and what I saw of it was that it's Noel Coward in his famous Las Vegas concerts, but as you actually say quite rightly in the plot, but quite nicely later on, it's not only his most lucrative month of his life, it is also the loneliest month of his life. And he's building up to that evening's performance, and you can see he's not quite, he's not jovial, he's a little maudlin.
Yeah.
And so he conjures up 2 friends from the past, at that point deceased, which is Gertrude Lawrence, with whom he'd worked 1,000 times, and of course Ivan Novello, with whom he had this kind of playful rivalry but friendship as well. And so he creates his own marvellous party, if you pardon the sort of the Coward.
Very good, yes.
There could be a few of these, I'm sure we'll be able to drop them. And then, so basically, then he and his friends have essentially a whale of a time in that playful but talked way, and indeed possibly tart way that they have, particularly Noel, before he goes on stage. So you quite rightly say you play the I don't know, the gentleman the gentleman who's his coordinator on the day, his American sort of.
Yeah, he was. Well, I mean, he. A fictitious character of Mr. Hing, the stage manager.
But that sets up the conceit very nicely. And you, David, are Noel.
I am indeed, yes.
And so that then leads into the show, which is fantastic. And I like that conceit. I think it works really well. And it's also self-referential in a way because, as we know, Noel Coward talks about whether he's got any friends in the audience that day or anyone's going to be introducing him, because he famously introduced Marlene Dietrich, and that's how. And Hermione Gingold wrote a song, I think, about running out of people to introduce her.
Yeah.
So it was a done thing, but that wasn't happening here. So you do feel his loneliness. It's a great idea. You are the author. How did you come up with this? When did this land for you?
I think about 12 months ago. I'm a regular visitor to the Edinburgh Fringe, and I was up here last year. Want to do something very different, as I've been doing straight plays for some time, and visited the venue here in Nicholson Square, which is a lovely venue, sort of semi-round.
And it has a touch of grandness as well.
It does indeed, yes. Yeah, it does look good. And then I began to talk to some friends, Colin, who plays Ivor, and Mandy, who plays Gertie. We've known each other many, many years. Now, my strength is more drama than singing, you'll agree with me, I'm sure. And
you can carry a tune.
Can I? Yes,
it's
the wrong one. Yeah. And so I said, well, I want to do a play with music. I love Coward's plays, so that got me talking, and then to the others. And I thought, well, that's Coward sorted, but who else can we put alongside him? So I started with his diaries, really, and started reading them, which are fascinating.
They are.
He doesn't actually say he was lonely, but it's the thread through the Vegas stuff is, please, can some more of the Hollywood royalty come, because I need to talk to somebody, I need to go for drinks with somebody.
There's also the iconography of the photograph, which you actually mentioned, which is him standing alone in the Nevada desert with a cup of tea, which is a fantastic photograph.
Yeah.
But my word, it is the last word in isolation.
Exactly, exactly.
And heat.
So that's where it started. I thought, well, I wonder, this man who loves parties, loves the social life, friends with royalty, how did he cope in Vegas? So that's the starting point. And then, okay, so if he was lonely, who was he longing for? And that's when Ivor's infamous post-show parties, his close friendship with Gertie came along, and that's where it all started, really. And I wanted to do the script first, and then make sure that the songs weren't just thrown in. I didn't want to do a cabaret of Coward.
No.
I wanted to do a play first with songs, and that's really where it all began.
By doing a play rather than a cabaret, and it's a nice distinction in the old-fashioned term of nice, because you are allowed to do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But what's lovely about the play is it also, therefore, allows for a wider emotional range. And so the show is touching. It builds up to this sort of rather lovely touching crescendo as his friends also leave him. They don't just arrive, they leave. And he explains that they have passed. They aren't just not there, they are dead.
And very suddenly as well. Both of them passed very suddenly.
And quite recently as well. They are over the last 5, 6, 7 years of his life at that point.
Yeah.
So it does actually give you a journey, to use the terminology. And I think that really pays off. I think that's a nice strength. Whereas it's a cabaret, it would be harder to do that. You could do it much more, you could do it as information that X died and Y died, but it wouldn't have quite the same impact.
Right.
And it delivers him back to his loneliness and he's 45 minutes closer to doing his performance.
Yes, exactly.
So I think that works very well. It's a very nicely structured piece.
Well, I think then it was, he was obviously, in his diaries, there was something, for me, rather exciting and sociable pretty much every day. He obviously liked being around people, and then he also liked, he longed for this villa in Jamaica, so he wanted a bit of solitude as well. So it's an interesting character. I didn't want to really do a biography of Cara.
No.
That's been done, and I didn't want to go too deep.
And will be done again.
And done again. I didn't want people coming up to the end saying, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Well, no, this was just a snapshot of his life, really. And if people come away saying, well, that was a musical play about friendship, that's fine. It could have been 3 other entertainers, but they weren't madly jealous of each other. They weren't competitive. They just enjoyed each other's company. I thought that's something a bit different from entertainers who rub alongside each other and maybe there is that kind of competitive edge to them. I don't think there was with these 3. There was that, say, playful humour between Novello and Coward, but they loved to go and watch each other's show. In the diary, Coward's always saying, went to see Ivers play on this, took somebody to see Ivers. So that they obviously enjoyed going to see things and having a good party afterwards.
And that lovely teasing relationship they have as well. I mean, do you know the Careless Rapture story?
No.
I think Peter Greenwell, who was the last accompanist of Noel Coward, famously recalled that, I think at the Ivy, because it would be the Ivy.
Of course.
Ivor was there with his producer, and they were pleased because they were clearly happy. So Noel comes up and says, why are you so happy? And he said, we've just come up with the name for my latest show, says Ivor, Careless Rapture. To which Noel Coward says, careless, definitely, rapture, that is for us to decide. And you think, that's waspish but funny.
Yeah.
But it's also, you have to be friends to be able to say that, don't you?
Yeah.
And that comes across very nicely. Before we go on with the story, I'd actually like to talk about your working relationship as the 3, because you've just said that you've known each other as friends, as well as collaborators and colleagues, for some years. And that, of course, is what you're also portraying in the piece. Does your own personal friendship colour how you perform it, or do you actually set that aside and then?
No, I think it's very important because I mean, Dave and I have known each other now for years.
Some years,
and Mandy. I mean, we've probably been friends for 30 years. So I think it definitely colours that because we know each other well enough that we know the idiosyncrasies and we know the timing things. I mean, so I think all of that has really come together to make it even a stronger production. And like David said, if people come out saying it's a story of friendship, I mean, it's our friendship, just that we're portraying just some other characters as well.
The rhythms of your own friendship inform the rhythms of the friendship that we're seeing on stage, which makes it all the more realistic, isn't it?
Yeah, and it helps me enjoy it. I mean, Noel steps out occasionally and just watches the action.
Yes, he does.
And I've not got bored with that at all. I love the songs; they're beautiful to hear, but also some of the dialogue. And I just enjoy watching the other 2 do their piece. At the moment, I just enjoy not only being part of it, but observing it. It's great fun.
I also love the fact that within the characters you don't stick rigidly, you as Noel don't just sing Noel songs, you as Ivor don't just sing Ivor songs, you play with each other, but also it's a smorgasbord of doing all the best bits, if you like, from the canons, isn't it? Because there's a touch of Private Lives, the balcony scene comes up, and you all have a crack at that, at different points. And of course it works so well, it also doesn't outstay its welcome, so it's pitched to perfection in that sense. Everything is bite-sized, nice, and then it moves on a little bit further.
Yeah, and I think there's scope for extending the show. We'll discuss it after the Fringe and see what's next. But it's only an hour, and they've both got a big catalogue of other stuff. So there's certainly scope for growth in the production and maybe some more fun, more dialogue. I mean, the death of Novello and Gertie does come quite suddenly. But that was true, it did. Yeah. It was totally unexpected, so certainly for Ivor. Gertie was struggling a bit, but for Ivor it was very sudden.
Absolutely, and far too young in both cases as well.
Exactly.
I often think, funnily enough, if Ivor Novello had lived another 20 years, if he'd been produced, if he carried on doing operettas into the 60s and 70s, we'd then see that Phantom of the Opera is just actually an operetta and not a musical.
Yeah.
And we'd actually see the through line of British operetta,
Yeah.
all the way from Gilbert and Sullivan to
very
now.
much.
Yeah.
Funnily
Very
enough,
much.
but
Yeah.
we have that 20-year gap, and no one sees Phantom of the Opera for what I think it really is.
Yeah.
But there we are. That's a discussion perhaps for another day.
No, I love Phantom. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's not to say it's not
Yeah.
a good thing, but my word, it doesn't feel like a standard
No.
Broadway musical
No,
by any
not
means,
at all.
does it?
Not at all.
So, we've got this lovely play, and you have the right cast, and you know the characters, and you've got all that. But you have picked parts of scenes from the plays, and you have also, of course, picked the songs. We have to talk about that. How easy is that? I was delighted to hear you say that it's not a best of, it's not a cabaret. It's what songs fit the mood, the moment, the time, the relationship, and the conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
But you do have to make a selection because, frankly, you're not going to be spoiled. You know, you are spoiled for choice, rather,
Yeah.
with both Ivor and Coward, who are prolific.
Yeah.
They still have songs which are not yet commercially recorded in
Oh,
both
yes,
cases.
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. I think that was a bit of a joint effort, wasn't it? I mean, obviously, the character we haven't mentioned is Norman Viney, played by Clive, who is musicology is great and brilliant, and so
And he's on stage with you.
he's
playing
on
piano,
stage
isn't he?
all the time. So I asked them to make a list of songs, but then I put them to one side, and as the script developed, there were certain areas, and we were talking about Ivor's mother, so that was sort of edging us towards a song about Mother Came Too,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
Noel goes and sees Clara about a musical student. We edge towards Mrs. Worthington, so that's I didn't want it to become suddenly a song comes out of nowhere. So
Yes,
they
it's
were
thematically linked.
exactly.
Yeah.
They were at the top of Ivor's flat, looking over London. We blended to London Pride. So it was a little bit contrived here and there, but I wanted it to be as natural as possible, really.
But you also want to hook,
Yes.
because they did write. I mean, Novello's songs I've not heard so much today,
No, they're not.
which is sad. And so. But yet he wrote some beautiful melodies, and some of the melodies that people remember, even though maybe they don't know the composer.
or
They've
even
heard,
the title. They might know the tune to Water My Heart, for example. which-
Exactly, yeah, but they wouldn't know it was an Ivor Novello. So you want to bring them in with something that is slightly familiar, instead of just going, not contriving it, but then going way out on left field and just not sure.
An unknown one, yes.
Well, that's right, yeah. And then people go, well, that's not much fun.
So, well, actually, it's interesting what you say about Ivor Novello, because I think you're absolutely right. Regrettably, his star has waned in many ways, and now is just remembered for a lot of people as a music award, which is odd.
Yeah.
And yet, I will tell you this: this is the second Fringe in succession where I have heard We'll Gather Lilacs and Keep the Home Fires Burning.
Right.
Now, the latter, of course, has just celebrated its 100th anniversary last year. I think it premiered in September, October 1914.
That's correct.
Right at the beginning of the war.
Yeah.
So, in a way, you expect that, but actually, to hear two Novello songs 2 years on the trot, and made that look, maybe, hopefully, for many more as well.
Yeah.
But what I like is the fact that they're not going. They may not be popular currency, but they're not going. They're lurking, and they deserve to lurk.
Yeah, so they
Well,
should be. Yeah.
Even though I have the English accent, I live in the States. So Noel Coward is very well known for his plays. I mean, I was telling David, I've done numerous productions in the US of Coward's plays, but his songs are not particularly well. I mean, some are and some aren't.
Mad About the Boy is really the best known, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that's
And
because
then-
they know the covers.
And Mad Dog's an Englishman because
well, of course.
because of the Joe Cocker tour. They would never think it was an Noel Coward. They think it's Joe Cocker in the 60s. But then Ivor Novello is a very much an unknown quantity.
Yeah, I imagine.
But again, it's when you put those melodies and they hear those tunes and they hear the music of his. I mean, I think it opens up just for especially for the American. And I'm not saying this is all we're going to just go transferring to America. Where I mean, we would love to see it do that. But I mean, I wanted the American audience to be able to think, wow, this is great music as well, which it is. It is.
I love your overture, by the way, which has got lots of songs which don't feature in the piece itself, such as "I Like America," which is actually it seems to be. And you must correct me if I'm wrong here, but the medley is more or less made up of the songs that he sang in his Las Vegas concert.
Yeah.
Many of which he'd written specially, and of course then duetted with Mary Martin.
Yes, exactly.
Who ironically took over, I think, from Gertie Lawrence.
That's in The King and I. Exactly right. Yeah.
Circles within circles, isn't it?
Yeah, we passed that over to Clive, and I gave him. Obviously, there was the album Coward Live in Las Vegas, so he listened to that and just worked on it a bit. Yeah, and does a great job. So as the audience drift in, they can hear a bit of that. So it's lovely. Yeah.
Also, I must say, there's well, I don't know if it's a musical joke. Well, it's a musical joke within. You do the brief encounter scene, rather fantastically across the board. The conceit of that, if I may, is the fact that it's either doing it with Gertie in the Trevor Howard and Celia Johnson roles, with you, David, as Noel.
And the Stanley Holloway part.
Playing a station master in the way that you were warned not to by David Lee or Noel Coward. First of all, it's beautiful to hear it again. It's lovely to see it in a different way, and it's hilarious and touching. It has all the things it's always had, plus a little bit more, which is added value is what we're talking here.
Yeah, we hope so. We had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, very much.
And we just felt at that stage in the play, knowing what was coming, we just wanted a bit of light relief, but also probably his most recognisable film as well. So we just wanted a snippet in our own little version of it.
But you also, and I don't know if this is down to you or whether it's down to your musical director, but it's there's a touch of Coronation Scott for the train, which of course is Vivian Ellis, who I always think of as the third and indeed the missing partner of the great 1930s British composers and lyricists.
Another member with some beautiful tunes and beautiful songs.
I adore Vivian. I always think Vivian Ellis is the halfway house between Noel Coward. I think Noel Coward has the tremendous wit, but some of his melodies aren't perhaps as lush as Ivor. Ivor has the lushness of his melodies, but some of his lyrics, which I know he didn't write, aren't always perhaps as good as they could be. But I think Vivian Ellis sits squarely in the middle and has got both sides of that coin, but no one knows who he is anymore. But it's great critic. But how lovely to meet two discerning gentlemen. You know what I'm talking about.
Of course,
yes. But just that also, it's Coronation Scott is a famous song about a train, or named after a train. I mean, mostly Temple theme, I think, from the radio.
That's right. Yeah.
But so it's just a lovely little insert. So there's lots of lovely little moments and nooks and niches.
Clive can't be with us today, but his arrangements are just amazing, and his mind thinks always what can combine to make it really musically a lot more fun. That maybe it's even after the event, like maybe you're walking out going, hang on, I remember
what was that tune?
So he does a great job.
He's a great member of the team, and a very important member, obviously.
And he has a few lines as well.
He does.
He's a good foil when you need it.
Yeah, and they're growing, may I say?
Oh, are they?
Stand up.
Yeah.
Now, I've got to ask this. Ivor Novello and Noel Coward are still immense figures of the British stage. There's no denying. They may not necessarily. Well, Ivor may not necessarily have the resonance that people remember him, but they are both 20th century British theatrical titans. There's no other way of describing it. Is that overwhelming for you, portraying them? I mean, you're both professional actors and you know what you're doing, but they do come with baggage or luggage, do they not?
I think they do. And, I think I'm aware of it, particularly because he was his own sort of persona, wasn't he, Coward? And people picture him with the chin up and the cigarette holder and the voice. And the look.
Singing typewriter, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I was aware that there was a lot of Coward fans around, and they would be picturing me before they walked through the door. And so, we talked about that a little bit. I think we felt that asking people to picture Ivor and Gertie is probably a more difficult ask. But if you say, what does Coward sound like? A lot of people. I mean, saying that, we've been introducing people to, surprisingly, people who've never heard of Coward as well. So
it seems to be amazing.
I know.
It must happen.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, part of it is, of course, in the Las Vegas set that he does, and then the rest is at Ivor's flat, which we felt very much was going to be. They're at home. They're just
it's
being
an intimate venue. Isn't
exactly,
it?
and it's that. So they don't have to. They don't have to be anything. They can be themselves.
They are friends.
And so the barbs between Ivor Novello and Noel and Gertie, I mean, I think it would have all been there, but it's all done very, very playfully as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's what, when Dave was talking about it, getting that importance of the performance in Vegas, or if they're performing, and then transferring back to the house where they would have had these great parties. I mean, and they would have, he would have gone, here, take this piece of music, play this, and let's see what you think of this.
Yeah.
And
Go around the piano.
Yeah, exactly.
We played around with that quite a bit. So what would it be like if they just sat and chatted? Because that's what you don't see. You pick up some of that in his books and in the diaries, but that was the interesting side for us. I think we knew when the music starts and the lights come up what Coward's like, but in the dressing room, what is he like?
I also like, but that thing you were just talking about, of that the intimacy between friends, because there is a moment, isn't there, when Ivor and Gertie are singing a song around a piano, and they're looking at the music and just doing that thing where they point at it, which is that thing you do when you perhaps haven't sung it recently and you're just reacquainting yourselves with it, which is what you do in a private environment, and not when you're. They wouldn't have dreamed of doing that if they were performing on stage.
No. And that was really important that we got that across. Yes,
those nice intimate moments really sort of help. Make it, I don't want to use homely, but it is the intimacy of Fringe.
Yeah. We wanted the audience to feel comfortable and to come with us, really. And I enjoy the mix of imagining the cabaret venue at Vegas and Novello's little flat at the top of the Strand Theatre. I mean, so that for me is the nice bit, just mixing the two up.
I've got to ask, we were talking about the Titans and whether it's overwhelming. Of course, Novello didn't sing in real life because he did have a curious sort of Welsh Italian accent.
Well, he did, and there's so little of anything that he recorded as well.
It's mostly narration to Mary Ellis or
exactly,
something like that.
I think.
Do you remember that song that we sang?
There is on an album of his. I think it's the Dancing Years. There's one where he sings. But he was a great. I mean, remembering that Novello didn't do hardly any of the lyrics.
No, it's Christopher Hassel.
Christopher Hassel and then others. But he was a very, very skilled musician, and as a composer. So.
And he gave the public what they wanted.
And I think that's what you were saying earlier. They were titans of the musical stage at their time because they knew what the public wanted. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that if that's what they wanted, if they wanted this massive musical that might have been a little bit schmaltzy, if we put them on today, that's what the public wanted.
Yeah, and they filled the biggest London theatres.
Yeah, they were the Andrew Lloyd Webbers of their day.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
I also say there's also a lovely, just small things as well. Also, on your tables, you've got little photographs of Gertie and Ivor and Noel. Their publicity photographs, and of course the Ivor one is in profile because it would be because Ivor that's what Ivor was famous for. We actually Mandy, who plays Gertie, her mother helped us. Mother came too, and she's got a real eye for detail, and that helped us a lot with the props and the bits and pieces. They were very useful. And at the Fringe, we only have 5 or 6 minutes to set up, so it's very, very quick. But what a glamorous stage!
Stepping back, it looks good.
I also like the beads on the piano.
Yeah,
so, do you know that really gives it a sort of 2030s feel as well, or a sort of retrospective feel. I've got to ask, I've got sort of 2 questions, but the first is going to be, is there a song that you've sort of particularly fallen in love with because of the performance or the show, more than any others? I'm asking you to pick a baby here, obviously.
I think for singing, which is not, as I say, my forte, I love doing London Pride because I love to picture what we're singing about, and I think it's a beautiful melody. And for Noel, it was quite easy to deliver. So that's beautiful. And I enjoy singing Mother Came Too with Ivor as well. That's good fun.
You duetified it.
We duetted, yeah.
I made a word up, but I'm Shakespeare. I like Shakespeare me.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's good fun to do.
Yeah, I think I grew up on Ivor Novello music and loved. I've always sung Ivor Novello's music. I don't know what it was. It always enjoyed that. I enjoyed singing "Fold Your Wings" for years and years and years, and so that's fun. But then I didn't actually know very well. And Mother Came Too. Her Mother Came Too.
Did you not?
No. Again, it's being over there in the former colonies for so long that they don't.
Although Jim Dale, who's just finished his one-man show in London, sang. And Her Mother Came Too in his London show because that was how he debuted on stage. Apparently he tripped over for his audition and they liked it so much they said sing the song but keep the trip.
Oh, that's right. I might do that tonight.
When he was a mere James Dale.
That's it.
But so that's it's currently had currency in London. So Ivor Novello has just recently been on the West End stage.
Yeah, he's back.
He'd have been pleased. Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is where does this go from here? And are there ways of contacting you about it?
Yes. Well, my theatre company is called Searchlight Theatre Company. That's the sort of the holding company for the production. So people can go on the website or email admin@searchlighttheatre.org, and that's where we'll be updating people on the future of this. We're only up here for the week. Reviews are coming in towards the end of the week, but they've all been very positive. So we'll use those and take it on to the next stage.
Yeah, and like I said, one of the things that we're trying to do is, of course, we want to do more of it over here. But then we are, we're looking, just because I live out there, we want to take it to the States because, like I said, Noel Coward has this. He's been running and running and running and he's packing the houses out.
Yes.
I mean, whether it be with Angela Lansbury in Blithe Spirit, or
Oh, yes, of course.
yeah, and I just did a regional production of Blithe Spirit and played to full houses. So
In America?
In Colorado, where I live, yeah.
And of course, it's still doing well in London. Hay
Fever,
Fever's currently
yeah.
on.
Yes,
it
We
is.
just had Angela Lansbury
Yep.
giving us her Blithe Spirit.
Yeah, and then
Blithe Spirit
we
comes back every
actually
5 years,
Yeah.
pretty much.
we have a Private Live starting in 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, a professional production of Private Live starting. So it definitely has lots of traction.
Well, I think you have a line about it must be satisfying for a coward play to be
open somewhere.
playing every night of the year somewhere.
Yeah,
It's probably still true.
Very true. Yeah.
Well, it's a great testament to them that people want to revive them, but it's a great testament to you that you have done so successfully in such a successful show. It's a masterclass, and I know he is the master, but it is a masterclass from first to last. And the three of you gel as friends in a way that even if you didn't name who you were being, it will be entertaining. The fact that we know who you're being makes it doubly entertaining.
Thank
So
you very
I'm
much.
delighted you brought it to Edinburgh, and I hope it does go somewhere else
Thank you.
and meets in all the iterations you plan for it.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you very
kind,
much.
kind.
Thank you.
Musical talk. Well, there we are, Colin Hearn and David Robinson, talking about a wonderful show. I thought it was a marvellous conceit, and I thought it was marvellously done. And that sense of loneliness which drove the whole thing along gave it just a beautiful, bittersweet feeling, which, of course, is entirely in keeping with Noel Coward. I gave it 5 stars and called it brittle and playful and as sparkling as a crystal chandelier. Well, now for something very different again. It's called The Secretary Turned CEO. It's an opera in English, which in itself is a really important opera in the history of musical theatre in its widest sense, as you'll hear in the following conversation. But in its current version, beautifully put together by Daniel Dondy, the musical director, it's a wonderful, light, frothy, tremendously amusing concoction. It's a confection, I suppose, essentially. Ostensibly a two-hander, although there are 3 people in the cast, and we'll hear about that in a minute. Let's hear a short medley of extracts of some of the aria or songs from The Secretary Turned CEO, and then we'll hear from Daniel Dondy himself. I hope you enjoy this, I think, very interesting insight into a lost piece of musical theatre history, which has come to life in the most perfect way at this year's Edinburgh Festival Fringe.
Oh, you accuse me of everything and anything. The poor,
You're not.
world war.
You're but.
I won't have
Oh,
a
my,
holiday,
You
holiday,
can't understand. I totally insane.
It has got to stop. It has got to stop. I will get on top.
Do you agree with
Do you
that?
agree with
I
it?
agree.
Am I to make
Is she
it?
left us?
Is she her dad and I don't think so.
Is she in charge?
Is she her dad and I?
No, no. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, no, no.
You gave me £20 and you never asked for it back. Just deducted it from my salary. Such a generous boss.
I know.
Magnificent.
Munificent.
Benevolent.
Beneficent.
And you know, life is more expensive these days. My rent is way up and my place apart at the end of the month. Every day for my payday now.
I know. When I buy my hummus in Waitrose, it's like £2. Damn it. Where is my master?
I want a raise.
Race? How dare you?
I need a raise.
How dare you, Serena?
I can't work anymore on minimum
Are you
wage.
trying to bankrupt me?
And you want the work can't hear and I deserve a raise.
Well, that's it. You're fired, damn it. How, I say. You can take your nail polish, your fluffy pens, and your glossy bob, and get out of my offices this instant. I can stand your talk, your walk, or your stupid face anymore.
You can't find me, you can't find me. Shut up, shut up, you can't find me. And I would pay corporation tax or national insurance or even VAT.
What? Since when?
Since I
Hi, I'm Daniel Dundee. I'm from Lucid Arts and Music, and we've got a show called The Secretary Turned CEO, which is playing at the Fringe Festival this year.
Now, this is a very interesting piece to me because it is a light comic opera, a chamber opera, I suppose it might be best described, but it's not in what I would call the sort of British understanding of a comic opera, which is Gilbert and Sullivan, which is more an operetta, or a Savoy opera, a genre in its own right. It's much more in the European style of a light comic opera, isn't it? A sort of Marriage of Figaro and a Barbara Seville kind of thing. Would that be fair, or
Yes.
am I talking nonsense? Tell me if I'm talking nonsense.
No, absolutely. I think they're two really good archetypes, actually. The piece we've actually based it on is by Pergolesi, a composer from the 18th century. His comic intermezzo, La Serva Padrona, was one of the earliest examples of comic opera to emerge in Italy. And what happened, you'd have a serious opera going on, and in the interval the curtain would come down and a small troupe of singers would come out in front of the curtain and perform an intermezzo for the audience while
You'd
they're
have a
having
support
their...
act in the middle,
Exactly.
essentially, to use.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and when I heard about this, I thought, that's a great idea, and actually translates weirdly well to the Fringe because it's the right length, it's the right sort of amount of performers, the right amount of, very little set or technical stuff to deal with.
Yes, it's a highly transportable show. isn't it?
Exactly,
Absolutely.
yes.
It's a beautiful little gem. It really is.
Thank you.
And you do it impeccably and beautifully. But let's talk a bit more about its genesis. So, how did you stumble across a musical with a pedigree like this? I use musical broadly, you understand?
That's absolutely fine, yeah. I moved in once with a bass singer called Dionysius Kiropoulos, who is now pursuing an academic career.
Very long calling card, I think.
Yes, absolutely. But at the time he was pursuing a singing career, and he showed me this piece, this Pergolesi, and said, "This is my favourite thing to sing. It's just right for my voice. Can we do it somewhere?" And I had a look at it and I thought, wow, this is a really great opera. It's got some fantastic arias in it. And actually, once I bothered to sit down with the translation and read the story, I thought it's very funny as well. It's got this kind of ridiculous farcical plot, and I thought,
it's cheekily silly, isn't it? Really?
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Lots of dressing up, lots of sort of disguises and tricks, and people being sort of unintentionally stupid.
And squabbling.
Yes, of course. Squabbling and bawdiness as well.
What's not to like, as I say.
Absolutely. And it was quite surprised that this kind of thing existed so early, but then I read a bit more about it and I found out that it was sort of directly one of the direct inspirations for Mozart's comic operas that came a little later.
Forgive me, just in the history of musical theatre, I know everything branches out, but you can trace everything back to, these kind of light operas.
Yes.
I think you can.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know much about broader stuff, but that's a very interesting point. So we...
There's that and the ballad opera, which is a bit more British tradition, but that's a slightly different thing. But
okay.
They're all contemporaneous.
Right.
Thomas Arne and people like that.
Oh, Thomas Arne, yeah. So Dionysius and I set about workshopping it, and I'm a composer and arranger by trade, so I thought adding my bits and bobs to it, I'd try and do a new arrangement of it. And I looked at the score and I thought, actually what might work really well is to have a kind of modern jazz band based ensemble. Because, it's all written in figured bass, and actually that's a bass line and a chord instrument, really. So a double bass and a guitar works almost just as well as the original. I didn't really have to do much to put it on those instruments and actually give it this sort of fresher contemporary sound.
And in a way, forgive me, I think that's the right decision. Well, it's absolutely the right decision because you come up trumps, but it's the right decision because actually putting it on as a period piece somehow disconnects it, or can disconnect it. You'd have to sort of almost be an expert in the period or have an interest in the period, whereas actually giving it a 21st century spin, English, resetting it in a context that people would understand, which is an office, a business environment, and then just making sure that you're both true to the authenticity of the music as conceived, whilst at the same time performing it and augmenting it in a slightly more modern, contemporaneous way, is a really beautiful handle. It's very accessible. I found it very accessible, and there was a group in the audience, I thought, last night, which is when I saw it, who were enjoying it and appreciating it, and the comments afterwards were very positive as well. So.
Oh, good. Yes, I heard a few of those. We've had some really nice audience feedback. But yeah, it's a really interesting point you raise about how authenticity can kind of be a little bit of an illusion sometimes, because if you try and do everything exactly as it was performed, then it's you're doing it in the wrong context, maybe.
Yeah, you're setting it in aspect.
Yeah. And the piece often comes across as a kind of museum piece when it's done nowadays, which is quite rarely. And I thought if we could somehow bring it back to how a contemporary audience might have seen it, and the kind of
so it meant something, as it were, to a modern day audience.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah, as I say, it's the accessibility, in fact, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've tried to adapt the piece in a variety of ways. So I did my arrangement, as I mentioned, and I also wrote some new interlinking bits of music between the recitatives, which kind of tick off a load of different stylistic influences from the modern day. I did that mostly because I think faffing around with old recitatives is not so advisable when trying to get translations.
It could be tiresome too.
Yeah.
And a modern ear isn't that much. Doesn't seem so keen on it.
Yeah.
It didn't. Just want dialogue or something to make it easy.
I think so.
Accessibility again, isn't
Accessibility.
it? That ability to connect with something.
So anyway, then the next stage in the piece's genesis was that I met Becca Marriott, who is a soprano by trade, but also had a fantastic libretto in her, it seemed. She had also independently been working on the same piece.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And Dionysius was the singer, was the mutual link. So he introduced us, and her version was this modern office-based translation of the story. And so we put our heads together and we put our ideas together and came up with this new piece, The Secretary Turned CEO.
How wonderful to find someone else with a similar idea. Or is it wonderful? I hope it's wonderful, because the fusion is really fantastic.
Well, it was, because I'm always hampered as a composer working in opera at being really totally unable to write words myself.
Oh, right. Well, but the fact you know that is really helpful, actually, because there are many people in the world who don't know that, and then you get a lumbering translation. Not saying you would, but one can find these things.
No, totally.
So it's almost a perfect sort of professional marriage in a way.
Absolutely, it was so great to find someone who has got a real talent for words and also a passion for the project and really committed and dedicated as me to kind of making it as good as it can be.
So let's talk about your element to it, though, because I think the score is actually one of the things that really sticks out. I mean, there's lots of lovely elements in it, but I love the fact. Well, let me be honest. I had clocked it as a show I was coming to see anyway, but I saw you performing with members of your band, orchestra, I don't know how you want to call them, outside the Pleasant Stone, funnily enough, which is where we are now, in the street, and I was waiting for somebody. And I'm pleased they were late, because I was really enjoying what was going on. It was just it's something very different from the Fringe, and yet absolutely within the Fringe tradition. So but standing out is so difficult. But standing out in a way that's good and entertaining, and you think, this sounds fantastic. So I knew I was in for a good evening before I arrived, and I love that marriage between. Well, sometimes you're sitting at your keyboard. Being a bit more cool and vibey, and then sometimes you stand up and you play the violin like a virtuoso, as I'm sure you are, but like the devil. You are... It's Paganini revived, as it were, in terms of... But it looks really impressive. It really does, and all of your colleagues providing the music look very versatile. You look absolutely... You look like you're enjoying it too, which goes a long way, but I love how you have married old music and new music, to be one of the phrase. I mean, did you find there was any jarring? Or I'm sure you're deft enough to have avoided that in your head even before you put pen to paper. But
it's a hard question to answer. I'm so close to the music that I perhaps can't see elements which might be jarring and which other people might.
Well, I think you've avoided it, but it's interesting how you got to the point where it is all avoided.
I think maybe it's to do with the subject matter of the piece. It's such a farcical comedy, and in the stage action, there's a sense that anything can happen at any point. Situations can turn on their faces. Characters' motivations can be revealed to be totally opposite to what you thought, and that kind of energy is being applied to the music as well. So at one moment, it's a very beautiful kind of late Baroque aria, and then suddenly you go into a blues weird thing that tells a bit more of the story in the way that a recitative would. Or there's a bit of reggae in there thrown in, and it's kind of incongruous, but in keeping with the mood of the piece, I think.
Well, let me put it this way. I actually thought it might be a modern pastiche, because I didn't know the original. But when I say pastiche, I mean in the best possible sense. I thought perhaps you'd composed the whole thing. But I mean that as a compliment, because means is, of course, that actually, although the styles are different, the fusion works really well. As an integrated whole, it has a beautiful, beautiful score.
Oh, thank you. Well, I did do certain things to try and give it a bit more integrity. I found a few little themes and chord progressions in the Pergolesi which I liked and which can kind of be played out of context as well. So
transferable, isn't it? Yeah.
Transferable, yeah. So, like, for instance, the first aria starts with a quite distinctive 3-bar phrase, which is the same motive going down in thirds. I could sing it if you like.
Yes, go on.
Go on, it goes rum bum bum ba-da-da-ba-da-dum, bum 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 ba-da-da-da-da-dum, bum 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 ba-da-da-ba-da-dum. And anyway, that kind of comes back all the way through the piece in my bits that I've composed in different keys and stuff.
Then, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, even though that's kind of the wrong century again, yes. But never mind.
It's a bit Wagnerian perhaps, but but in that sense, but it's as you say, it's something to which it comes back and helps generate cohesiveness. But there's energy as well, and you said so yourself. You wanted you were looking to put energy into the piece. Now, obviously, it's a speedy little, it doesn't hang around.
No,
it knows what it wants to do. It comes in, it does it. Thank you very much. I'm on my way home, and the music matches that. Completely. Now, obviously, the original score would.
Yeah.
But it's a directorial point, but it's also a musical directorial point, isn't it, as well? Which is the hat you're wearing. So, how did you keep the energy up?
One thing actually we found quite difficult when we first arrived in Edinburgh was the space we're in. These kind of black box studio theatres, they're not really designed for unamplified music. And
no, they're not.
And we got there, and the big thick curtains on the wall soaking up a lot of the sound. And it's just a slightly different space than we're used to, and we all panicked a little and went, oh, this is much harder work than it was in our sort of wooden floored rehearsal room. So I think just over the course of the first couple of weeks in our performances, we've really just tried to think about how to get the energy back in, and part of that is just raising the speed slightly. Part of that is how I think just using more dynamic extremes in the band, and just kind of encouraging the singers to really go in the moment and not be shy and not wait for people, and have a kind of sense that it all might fall apart because everyone's hurtling forward at full tilt. Somehow it stays together.
Yes, it's very much pell-mell, isn't it? It really is. And there's also a lovely little in-joke. There's a moment right at the beginning, I think it is, where someone picks up the telephone and it is immediately put on hold, and therefore you go to a much more traditional piece of classical music, which we all recognise as being a typical piece of old music. So that's a lovely little interpolation, I suppose. Is
thank you.
Well. Did you choose the hold music on that?
It did. Well, we needed to get the guy's mobile phone ringtone in there. That was the dramatic conceit. So we're thinking, what could we do? Could we have him take a call from his friend or hang up? And we thought that might be quite funny, something that used the band. Anyway, and then the phone ringtone, without giving away too much of the plot, comes back in a kind of crucial context later.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the performances and indeed the look of the piece. It's actually quite simple in some senses. There are principally 2 singing roles and a third sort of reaction role, I think, would be who's the intern. So let's talk about it. There is the boss of a luxury lavatory roll company, I think is the best way of describing it, who have hopes to get a contract with the House of Lords, such is their prestige. And then you've got his incredibly able secretary, PA, who really runs the show, in fairness. He's a bit of a lazy old so-and-so.
Yeah.
There's the love-hate relationship they have, which is the cause of much bickering and squabbling, and you're in, you're out. It's a lovely moment. I mean, where after a little argument, she writes his resignation letter for him in a way, or rather she sacks him, or certainly tries to.
Yes.
But you've also got this intern who doesn't really sing, but he does a lot of reaction. He's brought in to act as a policeman or play a role. So it's an interestingly petite cast, done in bold colours, because actually, and I mean that literally, there are filing boxes which have got different coloured sides in big bold colours, green and blues and yellows and reds. Somehow, Lord knows how you've done it, you've acquired scarlet lavatory roll. There are 3 rolls of red loo paper, basically, which...
That was one of our designer's most difficult tasks, to find coloured loo roll, because it doesn't really exist anymore.
No.
You go to the supermarkets and there's white, there's maybe peach, but getting bright coloured stuff is... I don't know how she did it. She must have found it online, I think.
You're saying the market's fallen out of the bottom? Hey!
Very good.
I feel my work here is done. But it looks striking. My word, it was fantastic. Yes, because there's other loo rolls as well. But, the primary colours really help underscore the pitch at which the performances are going, you know, and the company CEO, the boss, is in this beautiful, actual sort of purple plum suit, really.
Yes.
It's amazing.
That was another internet wonder. Our first idea was, okay, make this look like it's in an office because, you know, we're being quite naturalistic.
Yeah.
We want to kind of go with that. And then we thought, well, actually, it's going to look a bit glum and boring and grey, and we've got to
like
get some
the real
colour
office
in there.
does, I must say. Yes.
Yes. So we, you know, inspired by these modern kooky offices like Innocent Smoothies or Google, where there's like splashes of colour everywhere, we thought, okay, we can just take that to an extreme and make it quite surreally primary colours, bold. And yeah, I think that was a decision from our director and librettist and designer together, and I think it's come off really well. It really complements the mood and the feel of the piece.
Yes, it sets a tone in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really does. And the performances are very up-tempo, and, you know, as you say, they also turn on the sixpence. I mean, you know, if people are looking for naturalistic psychology here, I
Yes.
don't think they're going to find that.
Yes.
But that's not what you come for this for, I think. I think you come for a jolly little treat. I don't want to undersell it by saying that, because actually it's a very accomplished piece. I think everyone in it is... I mean, your singers are fantastic too.
They are. We're very lucky to have them, especially on, you know, fringe salaries,
Yes,
as it
quite.
were.
Yes, quite.
But they've got a range of kind of experience. Some of them have been just come out of postgrad in London colleges. Some of them have been on the professional scene for a while, and yeah, they all sort of saw the piece and thought it was a really good role and worth doing, even if you know, it's a month of essentially unpaid work.
But sometimes when a job is enjoyable...
Yes.
Yeah. And it was enjoyable to me as a member of the audience, so I hope it was enjoyable to them. But here's a question, though. I mean, if you know, they are both, the two I saw are both professional opera singers, and the score is both true to its original roots and yet also modern and contemporaneous and has twists. Were they sufficiently aware of the original piece for that to be not off-putting, but for it to be a new version which they had to then... was a challenge to them to absorb, or did they come to it sufficiently fresh that actually the score was sufficiently integrated they could...
Actually, they had a
buy
bit
into
of
it immediately?
pre-warning. We have workshopped the piece before, and a video of that existed, so the production's changed a lot since then. The whole cast and the directors also changed, but they were able to sort of see the piece and get a sense of what it was before they committed and realised that they were doing something that totally wasn't what they'd expected, a Pergolesi Baroque opera or whatever.
Yes, I suppose on paper it's a rather different prospect to actually what you get.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's a much, if I may say, as a paying audience, it's a much better prospect in some senses. You know, I go to musical theatre more, but I have a soft spot for comic opera and operetta and indeed the Gilbert and Sullivan tradition, very much so. The more British tradition, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this landed in my lap in a completely digestible form. And it was sweet to taste, if I can follow this, take it further. But I was impressed. There were moments where they were singing what appeared to be their libretto against, and I say against, you know, they were singing what felt like the original music without us hearing the original music, but with your new overlay upon it, which worked perfectly. There was a kind of there was a dichotomy in what we were getting musically and what we were getting lyrically, or so it seemed, but in a way that was balanced and appropriate. Is that something that you recognise, or have I misunderstood something?
I think that's a very fair and generous summation. Absolutely, yeah.
No, I like the fact that it could do things which, as a lay listener, someone fresh to it, I could see that. Also, what it appeared to me was that I was hearing the invisible melody, for want of a better phrase, whilst hearing the reality of the wider music around it. I haven't described that at all well, I don't think. But it's a quality I'm trying to describe.
I think I get a sense of what you mean, actually. And taking something up to Edinburgh, taking an opera up to Edinburgh is always terribly risky. It's not the most popular of genres. You know, you're up against all sorts of things. And so one of our ideas has been, what we'd love to do is to kind of bring a new audience in who maybe haven't heard opera before, haven't been to opera, and through this kind of very accessible surface actually kind of expose them to the beautiful music that's there underneath, and maybe get them thinking, oh, this is actually something different than what I expected.
Opera is no longer a closed book to me because I've seen and enjoyed this. So
yes, that kind of thing would be lovely if we've managed to do that to anyone on the Fringe.
Well, what I think you've successfully done, and in a really splendid, ingenious and impeccably produced and performed way, is resurrect something that's both important and actually jolly in its own right, even if it wasn't important. I think it's a lovely little piece. And I think, as I say, the word I keep coming back to is accessibility.
Yes.
But accessibility is not enough, because accessibility merely means you can absorb it. It doesn't necessarily mean you like it. It's accessible and enjoyable, and that is a very winning combination, it seems to me. Now we've been talking about this musical, and we've been talking about the band, and we've been talking about the singers and the performers. But let's put some sort of, I was going to say names to faces, but let's put names to images, because there are no faces here.
Sure.
Who's in your band with you? Because you form a very beautiful little sort of group together. Did you know them previously?
Actually, our double bass player I did meet last year in Malta. We played a gig in the Malta Symphony Orchestra together, and from some such things, great things born.
Well, it's all about networking, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's called Ben Havenden Williams, and what's great about him, he's got this jazz background, but is now a kind of very dedicated and serious classical player. So he's just got both strings to his bow, as it were.
Hey, I like it.
And
that helps perfectly with this, doesn't it? Because the show is the fusion of that. So you've got the man for the job.
That foundation was just what we're looking for. And Nicholas Rogers, our guitarist, is really one of the most phenomenal players I've ever come across. He's just able to sight read stuff which most guitarists can't do, and if you can meet someone who can do it, they're often not a fantastic guitarist, and he's both. We're also our singer's a double cast, because it's quite, as you know, quite tricky to rely on just a single person for the role up here.
And so also Edinburgh Fringe flu.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got in total 4 fantastic singers in our company. There's Crispin Lewis and Joanne Watson were the cast that you saw last night, who did a fantastic performance. And our other cast who are performing tonight are Sophia Troncoso and Tristan Harcom.
I'm actually glad you asked. You mentioned that. It's something I had wondered whether you were relying on just the 2. So I think you're very sensible. Also, forgive me, opera is a complex form and a strenuous form on the voice as well, isn't it? So, I mean, presumably it's also helpful to them to be able to have a night off where they can just sit there sipping honey drinks.
Well, even though it's a short show, it's just the energy and the kind of wild schedule of the Fringe is not great for singing every night. And as you've seen, we've been doing flyering things outside, so we can sort of alternate and have the singers who aren't on that evening doing that sort of thing.
The problem with having to keep up pep is it can make you go pop, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of health, that's absolutely true. Well, each and every one of those people is brilliant.
Yeah.
As are you, Daniel, by the way. So.
Also must mention Jordan Eliach, our actor, who really came in at absolutely the last minute. What happened? We had another guy called Tom Lawson who broke his foot.
Oh no!
2 days before our dress rehearsal in London, which was
bad for him and bad for you. Yes.
Can you imagine? A total nightmare. But somehow Tom called his good friend Jordan up and said, do you fancy doing this instead? And Jordan's got a strong musical theatre background, and he thought, yeah, fine, I'll just take a month off, go to Edinburgh, do a show. And he came in and he was just fantastic from the word go. And
yes, he's got those reaction skills which are exactly what are needed for this.
And yes, absolutely, sort of interfacing with the audience a bit more.
So you've mentioned it's already had a sort of performance and productions before. What is the hope for the future?
Well, I'd love to take it to more venues. This is the first time it's had a proper full length run. If it could maybe find a theatre in London which would be willing to put it on, or touring the rest of the UK, or maybe even further afield. Maybe even take it back to Italy. See what they make of it.
So everyone remembers it from the first time.
Yes.
And. But as you said earlier, it's a very transportable show. You can pack it up in a trunk and carry it away.
Yes,
the biggest thing is really a CEO's chair and a double bass.
Yeah, the double bass, we couldn't fit that on the train. That was the main worry coming up, so we did have to hire a van. But yeah, it's pretty transportable.
Yes,
Yeah.
it seems to be a good prospect if someone's interested in that.
Yeah,
And it
and
would also
no technical requirements really. We can kind of bring a laptop and a speaker and do all of that. So yeah.
Well, that's right. It's integrated within the orchestra and the band, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful show. So, do you have a website? And what's the name of the company again?
The company's called Lucid Arts, and our website is www.lucidarts.org.uk, and all the information about the show's there.
And how long are you here in Edinburgh for?
We are here till the 31st of August.
Oh, right to the end?
Right to the end, yeah. We're performing at 7:20 every day at C Venues on Chambers Street. It's venue 34.
It is indeed. It's actually one of my favourite venues, funny enough, because it's a lovely grand building.
It is.
Even if you can't see any of the walls because of the black material, as you say.
Funnily enough, I've been to Edinburgh twice before, and I think the first time was just to see a friend who was in a musical about Tony Blair.
Which one?
A student production. It was called Tony the Blair Musical.
Because the same year there was Tony Blair the musical.
There
as well.
was.
That was James Lark wrote
That
the
was
latter.
James Lark, who I knew from Cambridge, but this was a York production.
Was?
Anyway.
Yes, and I remember it had Princess Diana in it.
Oh right, yes.
As appearing in a kind of sort of phantom role, because I saw them both.
Okay.
And funnily enough, there was a third Tony Blair musical in London at the same time, so it was obviously a world.
Must have been the year of Tony.
Well, I saw Tony the Blair musical.
Yes.
Oh right, so who knows? We may have been sitting in the same audience.
Quite possibly.
And you know James as well.
I do, yeah.
Marvellous.
Yeah.
He's a very
Connections.
talented man. His Snow Spider was recently. That's a very good show.
Right. I haven't come across him recently actually, but I remember him being very, very talented at university, and
Well, he hasn't
glad
lost
to hear
his
he's up to
century,
things.
please no. But
Yeah.
you're not exactly a deficit in this area. No, this show is fantastic. Do you have any further projects that you're pursuing, or you'd like? You know, what's your ambition? Are you going to be raiding the chest of other delights which have been laying dormant for too many years?
I've been looking actually. It's funny you mentioned Thomas Arne. I was looking at a couple of his works as well earlier. That would maybe be a nice compliment to try something English to go with the Italian. It'd be nice to find a partner piece for the Pergolesi
Yes,
as well,
wouldn't it?
because it's such a short length that it might be a problem scheduling it on its own. But
Well,
maybe in
it's
a
a
double
two-act
bill it
evening
could
with
work.
two different.
Yeah. So maybe finding something for similar instrument possibilities would be a good next thing to do.
Well, I look forward to perhaps seeing you on the Fringe next year with your Thomas Arne spectacular.
We'll see, maybe.
Well, thank you, Daniel, so much for talking to Musical Talk. This show is lovely. It's a 5-star show, absolutely. It's impeccable, it's amusing, it's entertaining, it's accessible. It's everything that actually the Fringe should be delivering. So thank you very much for bringing it here. And I hope it goes on to have a great history in the future. It's already got to have a great history, so let's hope that you're pushing it into the next century and beyond, perhaps.
Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you.
I'm nothing without you. Serena, you're a part of me. You are a very heart of me, such a part of me, oh, the heart of me. Oh, poor defenseless creature, what will become of you? What will become of you? It is so gibberish to me, it is so gibberish to me, it is so gibberish to me. All these numbers, all these tables, Serena, I just don't know. A coward, I have no bones, no bones.
And on that amazing revelation, we finish with just an extra extract of one of the aria from The Secretary Turned CEO, a fantastic show, and my grateful thanks to Daniel Dondi for speaking to me about it. I gave it 5 stars and called it an impeccably performed and hilarious musical gem. And that wraps up today's show. So my thanks go to everyone who spoke to me today about their shows that were up at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, and my thanks go to you as well for listening. That's assuming, of course, you still are listening. If you gave up some time ago, earlier in the episode, then to you, as the late great Spike Milligan might have put it. And with those words of wisdom, which I'm sure you show the sagacity of the person who's speaking to you, it's time to say goodbye. And we finish today with one final song from the score of Jesus Camp, the comedy musical. Join us again soon on Musical Talk for more from the world of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe this year and across the wider world of musical theatre itself. But for now, it's time for me to say those words you've been longing for me to utter. Goodbye.
Don't you get it, Lucy
paper. I'm not a nice kid. I'm bad.
Oh, you're not so bad.
Oh, yeah? I draw on the walls and I blame my baby brother. I talk back to my dad. I never listen to my mother. I'm so bad. I'm so goddamn bad. Been dealt 40 detentions. I only show my face for 2. Every last one of my library books is well and truly overdue. I don't say my prayers at night, ain't never gonna do my chores. So face it, toots, and fill your boots, 'cause I'm bad to the core. I'm at war with the world, and the world is going down. I've made my decision, I'm a military precision, gonna burn it to the ground. 'Cause I'm so bad, I'm so goddamn bad. That's right, I'm bad, so bad. I'm so bad, I'm so goddamn bad. That's right, I'm bad, so bad.
Sweet baby Jesus, son of God! Don't you hear yourself, Chad Foster? It doesn't take a genius to guess. You're on a path to destruction and a life on crystal meth.
Bring it on, Lucy. You see, my parents can't control me. I've been shipped from school to school. But those jerks, they can't contain me. 'Cause I'm bad, but I'm no fool. No, I'm a goddamn American. I'm one of Uncle Sam's boys. Live fast, die young, get me a real gun and ditch these stupid toys.
Oh, say, can you sing?
For the chaos I bring.
What?
I'm at war with the world, and the world is going down. I've made my decision, I'm a military precision, gonna burn it to the ground. 'Cause I'm so bad, I'm so goddamn bad. That's right, I'm bad, so bad. I'm so bad, I'm so goddamn bad. That's right, I'm bad, so bad. School wrote a letter to my dad. He was furious. Went on and on about how important the army was to him and how much I'd embarrassed him. He said I'd never be a soldier.
Why?
He says I lack discipline and have no respect for authority.
Oh, so they sent you here?
Well, not exactly.
What happened then?
Finally, my dad lost his temper. He's got a mean right arm.
Oh, Chad.
So just for jokes, I stole his smokes and set fire to his car.
You set fire to his car?
Well, sort of. I put a smoke out in the glove box, but the whole thing would have gone up if they hadn't caught me. And you know what, Lucy?
What?
I don't give a damn because
You're so bad.
that's right, I'm bad. So wake up, Lucy, take note and see. You better pray that you can stay far away from me. 'Cause I'm bad.
This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2015, except for the music, where the copyright remains with the creators. And my great thanks to everyone who let me play songs from their shows. And don't forget to follow Musical Talk on all the social networks, and you can follow me on Twitter at Musical Talk Thos. I will, of course, take out the ums and ers, not only my own.
I had a good one there. I was like,
The tone pressure is just like, what?
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you just can't do it.
It's like
As I say, I always think it's best to cut those out, otherwise people think their earphones are gone wrong.
Yeah.
Lovely.